Like, employees who don't receive mental health support will often suffer in silence,
Mhm.
and and that eventually leads to burnout and dissatisfaction. So, in the long-term effect, that reduces organizational efficiency and would lower employee retention. That is really costly, and an inability to attract top talents as well, because somebody who exits from the company maybe telling other people about his unpleasant experiences within the company. So addressing mental health proactively is really essential for companies in terms of building a resilient, high performing workforce.
Good day. Welcome to the Leader's Edge, and today it's season 18, episode 7. And what a guest we have! Because he's going to talk about from recovery to optimization, rethinking mental health initiatives at work. And a lot of us do work, whether at home or in the office, and wouldn't we like to know how we can improve our mental health through the topic of our speaker? So I'd like to invite Rob Rances to say a little bit more about himself. Rob?
Hello, hi Dino. Hello to everyone watching right now. Yeah, I'm a neuroplastician. So I guess a lot of people are familiar with neuroplasticity, right? It is actually the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. So it's one of the breakthroughs that have been discovered not too recently, but right now it has been creating strides in terms of advancements in the applications of neuroscience.
Mm.
So neuroplasticity is actually central to both recovery and trauma in the context of mental health, but also in enhancing cognitive abilities. So it underpins our brain's ability to adapt to changes, recover from injury or stress, or simply improve its function. So what I do as a neuroplastician is that I design interventions that address the entire continuum in the mental health and performance. So, and particularly, I focus on people, helping people in critical roles and also in organizations in high stress environments like the military.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you on our show today because in previous seasons, we had a series that dealt with mental health, where we had guests who were clinical neurologists or psychologists. And boy, during those quarantine years, people did struggle a lot. So let's start off the show by asking you, Rob, what are some of the more common mental health challenges employees face in the workplace?
Yeah, you actually hear about them a lot, right? Like stress, anxiety, burnout, depression, and they could stem from several causes. Like, for example, some heavy workloads, lack of control over their tasks, or simply, poor work-life harmony. And another reason could also be the type of leadership and culture within the organization that can also trigger some mental health challenges.
I understand because sometimes, even if we're good in terms of our capacity as an employee or as a talent, if we have the wrong boss, toxic boss, that can really throw a monkey wrench in our output. So
Exactly.
I'd like to follow on that question by saying, how does mental health challenges affect an individual's performance and productivity of work? Obviously, it has an effect.
Yes, definitely. In fact, it has a significant effect because people who go through mental health issues can, you know, struggle with, lack of focus or perhaps a lowered memory and perhaps even, affect their decision making as well as their problem solving. So, for example, if an employee is dealing with chronic stress, then the employee may struggle to maintain some attention on task, leading to errors or perhaps even slower task completion, right? So this creates a domino effect. So lowering overall productivity eventually in the workplace or reducing the individual's sense of job satisfaction, which can further compound to stress and burnout and perhaps even, leaving the job.
I can agree with that because I did a whole series of interventions in the past for a client
Good to
in the
hear that.
semicon industry. As you know, semicon is very toxic. Their work schedules. Why? Because their slogan is on time, on cost, on quality, no excuses. And so, as you can imagine, their people are super stressed. So,
Mhm.
a question I have for you is we understand that stress or mental stress can really impact an individual's output and individual's effectivity, but what is the broader impact of mental health challenges on organizational performance, for example?
Thank you for asking that question because that's exactly where I'm coming from in terms of rethinking our approach to mental health and creating our mental health framework. Because a lot of mental health frameworks are so isolated from the business objectives of the organization. So let me just explain that a little bit. That on the organizational level, mental health challenges lead to, of course, we know absenteeism, presenteeism. This is when employees are physically present but mentally disengaged or lower morale. So teams become less cohesive and communication breaks down. And so often there are conflicts that are caused by silent mental health issues.
Mm,
And ultimately, this impacts the company's bottom line through reduced productivity, increased healthcare costs. We've seen a lot of statistics around this in the US and higher turnover rates. So, mental health, if not in an integrated framework that is connected to development and performance, or mental health in itself, when left unaddressed, can actually significantly hinder the organization's ability to be competitive, to innovate, and to catch up with the changes in the landscape.
mm. You know, I do have an observation to make, to maybe back up what you just said. I live nearby a call center, which I will
Mm-hmm.
not name. But in the 5 years that that call center has been in existence near where I am staying, in the 5 years, I've seen more than three times an ambulance standing by outside the main entrance of that facility to take away
Oh wow.
somebody who was out cold. And then what I hear them saying is, ano daw, na-stress daw sobra masyado, hinimatay na lang bigla or hindi na daw kumakain, puro na lang kape, kaya nagkaroon siya ng heart problems, so like, so we all know that there is a consequence to tremendous stress, especially when you hear the word quota, which is takot in reverse. And then on the other hand, no, in the military naman, kahit wala silang nakakain, they haven't had rest, they haven't had food, but they're highly motivated to
Mhm.
say fight the enemy or rescue people stranded because of the typhoon. Then they can achieve incredible things because of the mental health, their neuroplasticity, as it were, no, their resilience. So this leads me to my next question: how big is the impact of not addressing mental health in the workplace?
All right. So for that question, let me just isolate my answer from the context in the military, okay?
Mm,
So I think the impact is really substantial. In fact, if you've read the recent article from Harvard, I think it was from Harvard Business Review, where it says that, and it's based on research, it says that companies are actually losing billions annually due to untreated mental health issues. Well, mainly, I think I also mentioned a few of them earlier, mainly through lost productivity,
mm,
absenteeism. In the US, particularly, they highlighted healthcare costs
mm,
because some of these have already been covered by some companies. And of course, the human cost is equally significant as well. Like employees who don't receive mental health support will often suffer in silence,
mm,
and that eventually leads to burnout and dissatisfaction. So in the long term effect, that reduces organizational efficiency and would lower employee retention. That is really costly, and an inability to attract top talents as well, because somebody who exits from the company, maybe telling other people about his unpleasant experiences within the company. So addressing mental health proactively is really essential for companies in terms of building a resilient, high performing workforce.
Mm. So I suppose that's why some companies have these in-house Zumba sessions for people to not just get mentally fit but physically fit as well.
Mhm.
And why when I visited Google's offices here in High Street at BGC, I was just so stunned at how much fun the employees were having working.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw a ping pong table for crying out loud in the middle of the work area, and they could have free unlimited coffee. They could take spontaneous breaks. They could sack out if they were tired.
Mhm.
The retention rates were pretty good, and so you do
Mhm.
have a point there. But tell me, are there some, what you might say, early warning signs that an organization's employees may be struggling with, mental health challenges? Can you tell?
If you look at the studies, there are actually some patterns. So, for example, if one employee has been, performing and there's a sudden decline in productivity or increased absenteeism or disengagement or just simply some noticeable changes in the behavior, such as withdrawal, irritability, or simply very low energy, that could be an indicator of a mental health issue or a physical health issue. So employees may also start missing some deadlines, especially if it's not within the pattern of an employee, or show decreased participation in some team activities when previously the history has been the person has been proactive with team activities. So these are some indicators of mental health challenges. I'm not saying that they directly point to a mental health issue, but these are some of the indicators that employees could observe about their co-workers, and then eventually, reach out to them so that they could proactively address, or managers or HR could proactively address the issues that might be affecting their work simply because of some mental health challenges.
So I understand what you're saying, because sometimes even just a simple interview, a simple inquiry into how a person is doing, especially if you show genuine interest. Because quite often when we say, "Hey, say Rob, how are you doing?" Then Rob might think, "Oh, my boss is not really curious to hear how I'm doing, so I'll just give a perfunctory, 'Oh, I'm fine.'" But then, what if I, as Rob, will say, um, "Dino, how are you doing, really?" And then pause to indicate I'm really willing to listen. And then maybe that person will reveal uh, what he would otherwise have put a band-aid on and try to pretend that it didn't exist. So, Rob, um, would some of these symptoms include what we now commonly know as quiet resignation? When people just work the bare minimum, short of getting fired, to deal with their mental anxieties.
Some literature are actually pointing out to that. It could be a mental health issue that is triggering the quiet resignation, or it's simply some issues at work that is leading to quiet resignation, but will eventually escalate into a mental health issue. So there is a correlation around them if you look at the literature in that on that matter.
Hmm. It leads me to wonder, how does the concept of from recovery to optimization differ from traditional mental health approaches in the workplace? And what does it mean for companies aiming to build high performing teams?
I think a lot of mental health frameworks at work are not working, or should I say, really not optimizing in terms of impact, simply because they have been implemented as fragmented programs that are isolated from performance and development. So there is a lack of integration. And I think the lack of integration is due to the fact that we have very little understanding as to how the brain works in terms of health as well as its functions. So, what we do at Synapsity is that we actually fill up the gap by introducing another aspect of mental health, which is brain optimization. So, it's helping employees continuously improve their mental well being and performance. To explain that, there is actually a spectrum of brain states. A
Mhm.
normal person would have typical functioning, and then moving towards, let's say, towards the right would be optimized functioning, right? But however, when people go through some mental health issues, they could probably experience a mild dysfunction, escalating towards moderate challenges, and all the way towards severe mental health issues. So, those severe mental health issues and a few of those issues that contribute to moderate mental health challenges need to be treated. So, treatment is actually the intervention for that. But for those who are starting off with some moderate mental health challenges or mild prevention, I mean, the mild dysfunction, that could actually be addressed with some preventive interventions.
Mhm.
But it's not enough for people to simply prevent mental health issues or recover from mental health issues. What we have seen from studies is that if we are to optimize our brain health and our brain function, it provides a long term buffer against mental health. So you don't get yourself into a cycle of getting affected and then sliding down towards mental health issues and almost the same issue again and again and recovering from it and then sliding back again. When you optimize, you actually create new neural pathways for you to function in a different, should I say, a different landscape. All right. And you are more capable of resilience, cognitive flexibility, bouncing back. And the good thing is that they also contribute to your performance and engagement at work.
Mhm. I see how that can apply, for example, to say recruitment for the military. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in the U.S. Marines, when a raw recruit enters, he's got long hair, tattoos all over the place. He is not used to a regimented life, and then after 2 weeks of boot camp with a drill sergeant breathing down his neck and really instilling discipline in him, after say a couple of months of that, you're looking at a totally changed person. So I understand where you're getting at in that the mind through experiences will ultimately adapt and embrace the new realities around them. And
Mm-hmm.
if that's managed well, as what you're trying to describe through neuroplasticity, that person will not only become different, that person could become better. So this leads me to my next question. Can you explain how brain optimization principles can enhance not only mental health but also productivity and innovation within an organization?
So let me answer that in the context of what we do at Synapsity, which is my company. So at Synapsity, all our interventions are, created around two important frameworks. The first framework is called Switch. And the Switch framework is a sustained peak performance framework. It is informed by neuroscience, positive psychology, basically about human potential optimization. And by that, I mean, when I studied neuroscience as a scientist, I figured out that the brain regions that are responsible for mental and emotional well-being, spirituality, and also for performance or thriving, and even happiness actually intersect. They basically share almost the same brain regions except for, minor differences,
Mhm.
but they basically intersect. And so we try to create a program that is very practical. It's called Switch, and it's an acronym for spirituality, wisdom, intention, transformation, connection, and health. So we tried to create a program where it's all evidence based, based on, there's solid evidence around it. It's really science based, but yet very practical because an individual could apply them on a daily basis, depending on what the individual is most comfortable of at the moment. So, and at the individual level, we do that because what we have, what I think if you get to analyze a lot of the programs that we have in the corporate world, most of it is top down. And
Mm,
it loses one aspect, it misses one aspect that is most important, for example, for engagement, which is your personal agency.
mm,
So some companies design their programs in a way that if they give incentives, they give perks, they give a few creative stuff to their employees, eventually that would address mental health as well as engagement. But they forgot that the biggest factor for engagement, or should I say more than 50%, is actually personal agency. So this switch brings the control back to the person by creating, should I say, a collection of habits, a collective of habits that would lead him towards sustained peak performance or sustained human potential optimization. And then in companies, we build on that, and then we encourage companies to create an environment where employees don't just recover from stress or burnout, but consistently operate at their best, informed by the switch model. All right. So mental health is not just a fragmented initiative, but connected to the overall sustainability, human performance strategy of the company. So high performing teams are built not just on recovering from challenges or setbacks, but on continuous improvement in brain health, emotional resilience, cognitive function. And then we expanded that to what we call the optimized collective blueprint, which is more or less the application of switch in the context of people and the culture framework within a company.
mm. Sounds to me like you do, or the company you work with does a lot of customization based on the circumstances that a company might find itself in. If, for
Mm-hmm.
example, they're uh, trying to work towards becoming the innovator, not the imitator,
Mm-hmm.
then to help their people become more creative, more out of the box, as it were. You're saying that they might consult your organization, they might consult you, bring you in with their HR team, with their management team, so you can talk it over, and then come up with something that will help their people be what they can be, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for companies, actually, the context of brain optimization with consideration of mental health, wherever the person is in the spectrum of brain states, is actually particularly for brain optimization at the individual level. It's about like, improving cognitive functions like focus, memory, creative problem solving, as you have mentioned, which are directly tied to productivity and innovation, right? And in fact,
Mm,
exercises like this would help an individual develop cognitive flexibility, which is a good buffer which is actually a contributor to resilience. So the point is when employees optimize their brain health, they can actually work more efficiently, manage stress better, and contribute more to innovative ideas to their team. In our work at Synapsity, we have, as I've said, we've integrated the switch, which is the central foundation of what we do at the individual level, and then expanded it, for example, towards the people and culture initiative. So I'll give you an example because and we call that the optimized collective blueprint. So our blueprint, for example, includes the pillar of cognitive and emotional mastery. A lot of it is connected with, of course, mental health and also brain optimization. So the cognitive and emotional mastery pillar has two main components: neurocognitive flexibility. With it are subcomponents like cognitive flexibility and neuroplasticity, attention and focus, enhanced decision making, cognitive longevity, and then the other side of it is emotional regulation and agility, which includes emotional awareness, self regulation, empathy, compassion, resilience to high stress scenarios. But also at the same time, in the same framework, you would see another pillar, which is the third pillar of the optimized collective blueprint, which is future readiness and strategic agility. So the main components are adaptive leadership and strategic agility and innovation and disruption readiness. Some of the strategies that we include there are agile decision making, scenario planning and foresight, creative problem solving, risk taking and experimentation, even digital transformation and AI adoption. So it really fits well. We designed it in a way that it fits well with what HR has understood to be main points for crafting a people and culture strategy. But the I think the differentiator in the optimized collective blueprint is that it has measures that can directly impact business objectives like market leadership, revenue growth, and of course, for example, increasing your income by having a more efficient operations and all of that. So that's how we basically integrate that into the entire business operations, as while we also want to address the enhancement of people and culture strategy.
It sounds to me like you don't just choose one particular model to use when trying to help an organization or a client. Sometimes maybe you work with them alongside. In other words, as the organization is going through the year, you are helping them get through it simultaneously. In other words, there's a collaborative effort. Or other times you might approach it from hey, let's stop before we go any further. Let's fix things. Let's start from a clean slate. So um do you mind if I ask you to share, without mentioning, because of non-disclosure contracts, of course, could you tell us how your organization or the practice of neuroplasticity help an organization move from zero to hero? Is there an example that you could describe to us?
Yeah, there is an example that I could describe to you, but this one is in the corporate. So when I came in into the organization, they already have a framework for people and culture
Mm.
that is well defined. Well defined, except that it has, they have to work a little bit more on some of the details. And then what we did was actually to try to measure what they already do against the optimized collective blueprint. And then we identified areas for development. Then we started with executive leadership,
Mm.
and then executive leadership started to impact from a micro level to macro level, impacting, for example, some processes and all the way to, all the way to, I mean, meso level, all the way to the macro level, which is the vision and the business objectives of the company. So after like a couple of years working with them and with the organization eventually became the market leader. They're now one of the biggest chain in specifically in their industry, and they have increased their revenue as well. This is where you get to see that a lot of people and culture strategies have been fragmented from business objectives, but this is where we really approach it enterprise wide in
Mm.
terms of transformation and really taking it to the next level. So as a neuroplastician, again, what I do is help individuals develop practices and culture that can help them change their brains and adapt over time, particularly if they want to be competitive.
Mm.
Because being competitive today means getting into a landscape that is chaotic, hyper connected in term virtually at least, and then also, should I say, very complex and ever changing, right?
Mm.
So we develop some strategies both for individuals and also for the company to be thriving in that context. And one example was what I told you about.
Oh, that's good, because what I'm hearing is that your organization and you yourself, you're willing to go the distance. In other words, if it takes years to do it, you invest the time, you'll invest the effort to make it happen.
Yeah.
So that means that changes don't occur overnight. So like anybody who hires the organization, if they have the wrong expectations that, hey, you're going to go in there and wave your magic wand and all of a sudden everybody's just mentally healthy. It's not like that. In other words, it's a process, and a process that has to be carefully nurtured and overseen over a span of time. So it's not something that's going to just suddenly zap everybody and suddenly they're competitive. So you're a
Mhm.
neuroplastician. Tell us more about how does your company integrate neuroscience into its mental health initiatives? I mean, like, how does this provide a competitive edge for future ready organizations?
All right. Again, using the optimized collective blueprint. So we approach it as, as at the enterprise level, if we want to do that, because being future ready actually means the company is able to navigate the changes, the complexity, and the uncertainties of the business landscape, right? So what we do as what I do particularly as neuroplastician is actually to design interventions that address the entire continuum from mental health issues all the way to some performance needs of people specific to the landscape or the role that they operate in.
So I imagine by this time you've probably run into some companies where you have employees expressing anxiety over, say, AI will take my job,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're helping them to understand that, hey, it's not going to take your job; it's going to help you do your job better, because then you'll have more time for, say, work-life balance. So what are
Mm-hmm.
some actionable strategies that companies can implement to move from mental health recovery to sustained optimization?
First, they really need to want it. They need to really want sustained optimization in the organization and understand what it means in their contexts. But in general, to move from recovery to sustained optimization, companies can integrate brain health practices, for example, into their everyday operations. But it's very crucial for leaders to lead the way. So we have programs that are available for companies that would train leaders not only in terms of training but also in coaching so that they could create and cultivate a brain friendly environment that not only addresses mental health but also optimizes human potential. And this include, for example, as simple as mindfulness practices promoting work life harmony or providing regular mental health check-ins or allowing their employees to be pacing at work and rests. But it's important to also understand because there's a perfect timing to do that as well. And we implement the strategies, for example, with Switch and the Optimized Blueprint Collective. I think that's a first crucial step if they want to know more and explore how that can be beneficial in the context of their company. For example, in the Optimized Collective Blueprint, we included environmental mastery, which I think that was something you observed from Google, optimizing workplace conditions to support mental health and well-being. And along with that, it's tied up with resilience and recovery. It could be as simple as teaching employees how to recover from stress and maintain long-term well-being. So by embedding these strategies, aside from those and a lot more into the organizational culture and also business objectives, companies can ensure their teams are not just recovering from challenges, but also thriving consistently.
You know, Rob, this leads me to a question that, of course, I tend to ask many of our guests in the past. For example, when we had a guest who's a clinical psychologist, I asked her, "Ma'am, since you have so many patients within, say, a month, does it come to a point where you yourself will ultimately need to see a psychologist yourself? You know, like in the same way that priests eventually have to consult another priest and unburden themselves there." Um, do neuroplasticians, do they also need to decompress from time to time?
Oh, I actually use a lot of what I do on myself. I also use I use neurofeedback. These are machines I actually use biofeedback on myself. And I
Awesome.
also have a personal coach. They're not necessarily providing counseling or therapy for me, but simply to help me, try to put some organization into my work life. And yeah, time and again, that definitely that's very helpful. And besides, if you look at it from the context of optimization, not just from simply trying to recover, then you consider yourself as a perpetual learner, trying to be an ongoing journey towards optimizing yourself for as long as you are alive, right?
Yeah. So, here I am wondering now, how does optimizing brain health in the workplace contribute to long-term employee retention and overall company success? Because, the last thing we want are for people to leave in droves because they're so stressed.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's actually a very good question. And somebody also asked me that question. So, and he was an executive, and I told him that, we are in a company, and whether you like it or not, we are all paid to use our brains. So, if we're not optimizing our brains, then that's already a loss to the company, right?
Mm.
In fact, the higher you go in the corporate ladder, the more you are paid for using your brain. So, optimizing brain health and functioning ensures that leaders and employees are more engaged, resilient, satisfied in their work, which will directly impact their retention. And they also get to contribute to the initiatives of the company. So employees who feel supported in their mental health, but particularly the Gen Zs, are
Mm.
less likely to experience burnout and are more likely to stay with the company long term. So what we observe from Synapsity is that when we emphasize holistic well-being, it addresses not just cognitive performance, but then again also considering emotional and physical health as well. So this comprehensive approach fosters a culture where employees can feel valued, leading to higher retention rates and ultimately greater organizational success. Because a mentally healthy workforce is also more productive, creative, capable of driving the long term goals of the organization.
It sounds to me like the approach that Synapsity takes is holistic in character. In other words, without mentioning the name, I do have a client in the pharma industry where decades ago, a lot of them were hopelessly obese. Okay, aren't they glad I'm not mentioning them? Anyway, uh, we had meetings where food was always served all the time. No matter what kind of meeting it was, we were always eating during the meeting. And then when their chairman changed and their HR implemented some new rules and guidelines, which included not just mental health but physical health as well, this pharma company started to sponsor marathons, health clinics, and when they serve food, because they still love to eat, but no more pastries, just fruits, vegetables, vegetable sticks. So everything was just plain healthy. No more soda served in the company compound, and of course they have their Zumba sessions. So their productivity just went through the ceiling after that because people took less sick leaves, vacation leaves because they like showing up for work, and they have one of
Mhm.
the highest years of service in their industry. Like it's not uncommon
Wow.
to hear somebody with 36 years or 38 years with that particular organization. Which leads me now to my question for you. Rob, what trends do you see shaping the future of mental health in the workplace? And how is Synapsity preparing organizations to thrive in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, in terms of trend, I think you mentioned some, right? Because there's a growing emphasis now on proactive mental health optimization rather than just simply, approaching it from a treatment or recovery perspective. And also, companies are now recognizing that mental health is integral to overall business performances. As you said, their productivity increased significantly by introducing some of those initiatives. And now we've also seen a shift towards integrating mental, emotional, physical, even spiritual well-being into organizational strategies. So, but we are really, really proud at Synapsity because we are at the forefront of these trends in which our switch model and the optimized collective blueprint. And these frameworks have helped organizations so far build environments that are supportive of the employee's mental health optimization, cognitive flexibility, emotional resilience, aside from the usual mental health challenges. So we feel like we're preparing organizations to adapt to these future forward strategies. Well, ultimately, my ideal is that we would have organizations that would become powerhouses of joy, productivity, innovation, and resilience because we spend most of our waking hours at work as adults, right? So
Right.
we want to ensure that our employees are equipped to handle evolving demands at the workplace, but also fostering thriving happiness, innovation, and all of that that's necessary for an ever changing environment.
Well, you know what? I've been very, very fascinated by our discussion today. And part of me wish we had more time because like I'm thinking what your company is doing doesn't just apply for people who are at work, meaning live, working live in their offices, but this can also apply to those who work away from the office or work from home. Uh, because sometimes, although we say, okay, working from home is really cool because you don't have to be stuck in traffic, you don't have to look for a parking place, you don't have to have a bursting bladder waiting to get home. But all of the pressures from home cascade down on you. So sometimes it's hard to concentrate on what you're supposed to be doing for the office. So I'm sure that maybe in a
Mhm.
future episode we could talk about that as well. Like how does Synapsity help an organization where most of their employees work from home instead of work in the office? I mean, that's something I would definitely like to invite you back again to talk about.
If I may use a few minutes to add to that,
Sure.
actually, if you look
Yes.
at the studies right now, if you look at the studies right now, there are rising that increase of cases of mental health challenges of people working at home or working remotely are actually higher than those who are working in a
Wow.
physical space. And I think the explanation for that is social isolation because our brain is actually we are all social individuals and our brain is designed to navigate the world and the challenges around them in the context of a social environment.
Mm.
So without it, then the brain loses its support in terms of how an individual would navigate the challenges around. Plus, it also it also introduces them to complexity of managing both the concerns at home and also at the same time meeting all the requirements at work.
Mm. Come to think of it, what your organization is doing, what you're doing, could help immensely, not just private industry or drivers of the economy, but even the academe, because a lot of education is still ongoing as online education, which is very lacking in terms of engagement. So, I have a feeling you could make a difference if they let you help them, help their students, help their learners. So, Rob, tell us a little bit more about how do people reach you? Where do they find you? Where can they learn more about neuroplasticity?
All right, so actually we have a Facebook page, and the reason why I mentioned a Facebook page because you mentioned about the academe. And I think that's going to be on November 6th. We're doing a free webinar on the topic of youth mental health. And we're giving out free strategies for parents and also for educators. So I think our organizer has posted that on Facebook. Our page is called Synapsity, Synapsity. And we usually post all our upcoming activities in that page. Also, I get to post some of the activities and that we do that is available to the public through my LinkedIn and also my Facebook page. For the rest, you can actually contact me directly, just so that I would know that you are contacting me from this particular webinar or interview. So contact me directly. My email is robrances@gmail.com.
Wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just thank Rob here for being our gracious guest. I know that he's busy, and I know that he has a flight to catch. So, thank you so much, Rob, for being with us today.
Yes, it is such a pleasure to be with you today and to be able to impact those who are listening to us. And I hope we were able to add value to your lives and also to your work.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you learn from this and you'd like to learn more, do leave us comments in the comment section. Our guests love to read them, so do we. And if you have ideas about topics that you'd like us to discuss in this show, let us know. And as our sister show will be airing soon, our next episode for Tip Talks will be our analysis of the United States vice presidential debate between Waltz and Vance. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as ever, we all believe that learning is a never ending journey with limitless vistas. Good day.